Okay guys, today we're going to work on the quick and down and dirty way to change vanes in your oil flood or rotary vane vacuum pump. This particular one is a 202 head, and if you take a look, it's the HAF. HAF is going to have 3 vanes in it. If it was an M version, it would have 4. So what we're going to start by doing is we're going to take this fan cover off. It's going to be 4 screws. And then we'll take a set screw off for the fan. And after we do that, there's no retainer for the rotor that's inside here that contains the vanes. So then we'll be able to take out all these 1/4 bolts, and then we'll be able to slide this whole rotor and assembly out of the roller bearing that's back here, clean it all up, and change the vanes. So let's get started. A stubby Phillips screwdriver works the best here on these. Alrighty, here's the fan we're going to take off. So what we need to do is loosen this and loosen this, and we should be able to take it right off. tight coming off of there. So what I'm doing is holding the pulley and trying to spin. Spin the blade off. Alrighty. I will be back in a second. Okay, so got the fan back with a hammer so as not to damage it. Gonna spray it with some lube so that hopefully we can get it to come off. I don't know why this is gonna fight me, but it is. Almost like the end of the shaft's peened. Not sure. Alrighty. We got the fan off now. Shaft's got some thickened grease from over the years. So that The shaft should pull straight through. There's a seal and a roller bearing in there. This side, in here we've got a seal that you will ruin to get to a bearing, and the bearing is held in place with like a castle nut, and you kind of need a special tool or a chisel to get in there because it's inset, so it's a lot harder to get in there without the proper tools. So if you don't have that stuff, it's a lot easier to change the vanes this way, as long as you don't have to do the bearings. Okay, so I like to use a 7/16 with an extension. Sometimes you may, depending on the size, have to use a wrench because this is off-centered. You may not have access to the bolts. But when you do these, except for two, they will all be these long bolts. Where these short bolts are is going to be threaded into the housing right here. And that's where you can take two of the long bolts that you removed and you can put them inside the threaded holes, and then you tighten those, and it'll help you take the plate and separate it from the body and pull the assembly out. So that's what we'll do right now, but I don't know if I'll be able to, since I don't have a tripod or anything. And I'm not sure how much oil I've got. I think the reason this pump broke its vanes is because it was flooded with too much oil. It's got way too much oil inside it. There's no place for the vanes to go. It just kind of like, we'll just say, hits like a brick wall, and it snaps the vanes. Let's see here. And so, yeah, it looks like there's still quite a bit of oil in there. Gonna have to figure out a way to direct the oil so it's not everywhere. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I got an oil absorbent cloth here. I cut this piece to go around the base and underneath the plate. Kind of folded the edges. Tried to put a dip in it so that hopefully the oil will go into this container. Here's the plan. So we'll see how well this works. And as you see, tightening that bolt, and the oil is coming right into my bucket as I wanted. So we'll let this drain for a little bit. Maybe open it a little more. One thing I'll show you guys is that it shouldn't be too hard to put this back together unless you take both end caps off and then forget what side they go on. But for the most part, you put your arrow on top, and of course the rotor inside is towards the top. It's not centered inside the housing, but you do have these alignment pins that are in the cap, so it does only go on one way. Okay, so after cleaning everything up, making sure bearings don't have anything in them. This didn't because it broke and was shut off right away, so it didn't run with all those chunks in there. What we're going to do is we're going to clean up this outside edge. Going to clean up this edge. We're going to use just a mild abrasive like this Scotch-Brite. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a red RTV gasket maker, and we're going to put just the thinnest coat possible on this. This is a very tight machined surface area, so we really don't need a thick amount of gasket. And if you do, a lot of times, if you don't run the pump after rebuilding, it will actually cause the rotor to bind or the blades because it squishes in there when you put it back together. So be very cautious how much you use when putting this all back together. So I guess since I need my hands, I'll get this all done and get back to you in a few minutes. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is here's a new vane, and see, slides in easy. That's what we want. Now what we won't do is, even though this looks good and it didn't break, what happened is it did bend. You can't see it on camera. If you put a flat edge on it, you might be able to see it. But when you push it in, it stops there. I could probably force it in, which means it'll either stay in and we're going to lose vacuum when it's running because it won't come out, or at some point it will come out and it travels, but it won't come back in and it'll snap, and we're going to have the same problem again, and it's going to be another expensive fix. So for the most part, even though it looks good, you probably don't want to reuse it. So let's put this thing back together, guys. Alrighty, so we stuck the vanes in the slot and we carefully lifted the rotor and everything into place. Made sure the vanes didn't catch on anything, and then, you know, just made sure that went through nice and we didn't catch the seal and push it out. And then when we tightened the bolts, you know, we just made sure we did opposites, you know, here, 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 and then just worked ourselves around to make sure it's nice and even. And then what you want to do is make sure it turns nice and smooth. Make sure you hear the vanes come out. You can, I don't know if you can hear them clank. So you can hear them coming out of the slots just like they should. So now all we got to do is put that back on and we are good to go, and this is all rebuilt.